Let the meltdown begin. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's do this thing, triple threat style. As Joey Odessa returns to the rotation after a week hiatus, going to crunch some numbers. We've got a rare Friday afternoon card from Abu Dhabi. Robin Black will join me in studio. We'll give you information about how you can cash in and win in the $500 countermove.com fantasy free roll. Just check it out online. Morency and Black. And Pat Bam Bam Healey returns to the rotation as well. Used to be a regular contributor to the program. A dude flew under the radar for the last couple of months, but we got Pat Healey back on the program, and he's going to be back in the octagon on April the 19th against Jorge Masvidal. We'll talk about his upcoming fight. We got our videos of the week. All that and more on tonight's MMA Meltdown. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. Got a great show lined up for you this evening. Robin Black from the Fight Network will join me in studio. Joey Odessa will join us from Costa Rica. We'll crunch some numbers. We've got a rare Friday afternoon UFC card, but let's kickstart the party with a man who was a regular on the show for many years, but I thought the dude was in the witness protection program or something, laying low in Hawaii, but he returns to the octagon on April the 19th against Jorge Masvidal, and we are joined by the one and only Pat Bam Bam Healey. Pat, it's been too long, brother. How you been, Pat?
I've been great, man. Yeah, and you're right. It has been too long. I've always enjoyed coming on your show.
Yeah, you know what? It's great to have you back on the show, but let's be honest, Pat, 2013 sucked, and I figured, you know what, there's nothing really good to say right now. We'll let them lay low, and I tell you, 2013, for me, really wasn't one of my favorite years either, Pat, and I don't even really believe in all this astrology stuff, but I found out the Chinese astrology, it was Year of the Snake. And I'm thinking, that doesn't sound good. You know, that's no good. 2014, Year of the Horse. So I bet a ton of money on the Denver Broncos thinking, you know, it's a new year, it's 2014, Year of the Horse in the Super Bowl. That didn't work out very well, but nevertheless, I'm stoked that it's 2014, and I imagine you're stoked to get back in the octagon.
Yeah, man, I'm very excited to get back in there. Race, kind of like you said, it wasn't the greatest year for me last year, so I look forward to getting in there and making 2014 a great year and getting back to that winning form.
Now, I've heard you say recently, Pat, it's all about getting back to basics. And I think when you were on that roll in 2011 and 2012, and you were just kicking some serious ass, you were in such a zone. Did you find that you sort of got away from what got you there a little bit? Because I remember, you were saying, I'm not just a grinder. I'm going to show these guys I've got a lot of skill, and you do have a lot of skill, but do you have to remember what got you to the dance in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it right there. I mean, sometimes I was getting so caught up, like, working on things that I thought I needed to improve on, and I just kind of thought that my strengths would take care of themselves. And I got away from training my wrestling. I got away from grappling a lot, which are, two of my strongest areas, thinking that it would just take care of itself. And, I think that was a huge mistake. And, you always need to be working on your weak spots, but you certainly can't get away from, doing what you do best.
It's amazing to me. And so I don't know if you've had any unsanctioned fights, so to speak, but is this officially your 50th fight coming up right now?
Yeah, I know I've had a couple more, at a couple in the Midwest that never got reported and stuff. But there's like one on my record that's, twice that, only happened once. So, to be honest, I really have no idea how many fights I have had at this point. But 50 sounds good enough.
Yeah, it's a nice even number. I mean, it'd be nice if they gave you a Rolex or something. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Congratulations, Pat. On your 50th fight. But I bring that up, and I congratulate you. It's an incredible feat, man. An incredible feat, Pat, in a sport that guys hit the wall usually after 20, and you feel as if though you're just hitting into your prime right now. But it just strikes me as amazing that as much of a veteran as you've been, you can still fall prone to overthinking a little bit, can't you? As you talked about, you look at your flaws, but you don't want to overthink, right?
Yeah, and I think I got a little bit too involved in that, and I always, I try to think of this piece of advice I got way back when I wrestled in high school from a coach, and it still stands so true to me. And no matter what sport, if you're talking kickboxing or boxing or wrestling or grappling, he always used to say, it's not easy, but it's simple. Don't overthink it. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's simple. Don't complicate things. And, I've really been thinking about that advice for this fight, and, I think it'll pay off.
So let's speak a little bit about this fight. So what's Masvidal's problem, man? Like, you guys are supposed to fight before in the past, but it seems like, he's wanted to fight you. Hasn't seemed to have gotten as personal as it did against Chiesa, like it did. But I don't know if Masvidal is trying to make a name for himself by always talking before fights now. But what's the deal with this guy? And is there anything personal with you guys going back over the years?
No, not for me at least. I don't know, but he certainly has called me out. Like, I think this is like the third time or something he's called me out. So he obviously feels like he can beat me, and I certainly feel like I can beat him, and I think that is very motivating too when somebody feels like they can beat you, and he's called me out. That certainly has lit a fire under me.
Pat Bam Bam Healy with us. So I mentioned you've spent a lot of time in Hawaii. You're back home in the Oregon area right now. Where's the bulk of the training been put in for this fight, Pat?
I've been training at it's now called Rose City FC. It used to be called Sports Lab. We've made a few changes there, and they've all been positive. A lot of the guys who left Sports Lab at one time have all come back. So that's been really good, and they've got a strong wrestling program there with a couple of good coaches that I think it's really beneficial to me.
When you look at this matchup, you brought up your wrestling background a couple of times here. Is that the key to success for you in this fight, Pat?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not just wrestling. I think kind of the grinding, clinch fighting things that has won me a lot of fights in the past. I think this is going to be important. I mean, I certainly don't want to play a boxing game with Masvidal. He's got real clean boxing, so I certainly don't want to play that game with him. I want to make does stay on his feet. I want to keep it in the clinch and be yanking on his head and using my size and that type of thing.
Yeah, and clearly, as you stated, he's going to want to keep this standing up. And like you said, man, it ain't pretty and it's not easy, but it's a pain in the ass, man, when you're grinding and you're all over somebody and you turn it into a real grind fest in there. I look forward to this fight. I imagine you feel pressure going into every fight, Pat, but do you feel more pressure when you see a guy like Jake Shields who's been around get released? Do you feel as though you're fighting for your job every time you step into the octagon?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I've really been, I've certainly been like visualizing the fight and stuff to try to take some of that pressure off, but it's not the funnest thing in the world to feel like your job's on the line every fight, but I've been also focusing on trying to just go out there and have a great performance, and and let the chips fall where they may. As long as I go out there and leave everything in the octagon, I feel like, the win will take care of itself.
Yeah, and I'm obviously no coach, Pat, but, it's not life or death, all right? Whatever happens, that's not your last fight. And I like you in this fight. And although I got to say, I would like you in every fight, Pat.
That feels good, man, because I know you're a betting man, and, to have your expertise of betting on my side, I'll take that.
Yeah, no, for better or worse, man. I've always got your back, and I have over the years. And like I said, I think this is a good matchup for you. He's going to want to be standing this thing up. Your stand-up is good, but you mix it up a bit. You dirty up this fight, and I like your chances a lot.
Well, I appreciate that, and that certainly is the game plan.
Pat Bam Bam Healy with us. But like I said, I'm not a coach. I'm just a gambler. Pat, I'm not a coach. Although I will say, I'm always put off by some of the crappy coaching that goes on in mixed martial arts. Guys, trainers, guys, you're doing great when a guy's getting his ass kicked, or, get up when the guy's on top of you. And I'm thinking, is that the best you got? Is that the best the corner can bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, that is a frustrating piece of advice when somebody will just yell something like that. Get up. Well, I'm trying. There's a little more that goes into it than just getting up. And
what's the worst?
I mean, even at the highest level at the UFC, I mean, I've seen some interesting things going on, even in like the training rooms when you're going and doing your last week of training. I've seen guys sparring full out in there. I've seen odd things like that. So, it's, MMA being still a pretty new sport, and, sometimes some not so great coaches can get good people under their wings and direction.
Pat Bam Bam Healy with us. I was going to ask you, Pat, before we let you go, what's is there a thing that someone told you in which you wanted to look over to the guy and say, hey, I'm obviously aware. What's the dumbest thing or maybe the best thing that you've ever gotten as far as advice? What about your brother? Is your brother yelling crap at you during fights?
Yeah, my brother, but, he tries to be, we all try to be really honest with each other. It sometimes can be hard. I try not to really put him in the position to corner for me because, man, I know how nervous I get when I corner for him. And, I certainly don't ever want him to pick up on my vibes of being nervous. And it's never like a thing of, I'm afraid, think he's going to lose or anything, but, man, it's my brother, man. I mean, when you see somebody punch your brother in the face, you want to jump over the cage and punch that guy,
Well, dude, I've got something for you because later in the show, Pat, we got in a portion of our videos of the week. Leave it to the dudes in Poland. It's team fighting. There's like 5 guys at once, and they're just beating the crap out of each other, man. And it was like Poland versus Sweden. So you got a career in the future, man. The Fighting Healy brothers, tag team, man. Some hardcore stuff.
Yeah, we might be pretty good at that, man. From our early years and growing up, we always we're sending our friends home crying when we were kids growing up because we'd gang up on them, and we didn't know we played rough, and we would never do it like out of malice or anything, but. Yeah, my parents were always getting complaints about that.
Well, you're not called Bam Bam for nothing, Pat, right?
That's right.
You're not called Bam Bam for nothing. The Diamond and Bam Bam. Hey, it was great to catch up with you, Pat. We wish you the best of luck, man. We'll definitely get you back on the show after your win. On April the 19th in Orlando, Florida against Jorge Masvidal. We wish you the best of luck, bro. It was great to catch up with you, man.
Yep, always appreciate it, Gabe, and I certainly will make sure that it never goes on this long without talking to you again.
Yeah, we're gonna track your ass down quicker this time, Pat. It's always a pleasure, bro.
I'll call you from the beach, I promise.
There he is, Pat Bam Bam Healy. And like I said, I like him in this fight. Masvidal's a good fighter, but yeah, he's somewhat one-dimensional. His ground game isn't great, and I think that Healy can wear him out and just, dirtify this thing, man. Like I said, when Pat Healey went on this run, he was like 6-1 in 7 fights. And I think, he sort of started to take offense a little bit to being called just a grinder. People are like, oh, he's a grizzled vet, he's a grinder. And then you saw he started to open things up and he was getting into more stand-up wars. I think him getting back to his roots and being a grinder, that's what was working for him. Go back to grinding, and I think he'll go back to winning. I like Pat Healey to win this fight, and I'm not just saying this because we just had Pat Healey on the program. Robin Black's going to join me in studio. As I stated, we got some crazy videos this week for you. Ed, Joey Odessa, all that and more. MMA Meltdown continues. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. I am Gabriel Morency, sitting alongside the Fight Network's very own, the Professor, Robin Black. Robin, it's always a pleasure. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Good hanging with you, always.
Always have a great time having you on the program as well, and we always have a great time playing a fantasy free roll, courtesy of the 5 people over at Counter Move. And let's be honest, we both didn't do very good at our first attempt with Counter Move. Yet I am proud to announce that in my second attempt, I finished in the money this past Friday night in the Bellator Counter Move tournament. Now, I should note, there are only 58 people in this tournament, Robin, so it wasn't like ours where there was 2,500 people.
Still.
58 people, I finished in second place.
Wow.
So in other words, I figured this thing out.
You think you got it down, eh? Okay, this is going to be interesting.
Well, I went from 2,200 to 2.
If you can go from 2,200 to 2 and stay consistently at 2, then you have this thing figured out, man. I don't know, though. I'm still looking at it, and I'm looking at, we're doing it for Friday's card, and I'm looking at that thing going, I don't know, if Roy Nelson hits him, that's good, but, lands the big overhand right, but then you look at some of the other ones, you're like, man, there's so much math involved, But
look, isn't the way to do this with Counter Move is you want fights with action, and you want fights that go the distance to rack up the points. And this is what I figured out. I took Minikoff and Congo.
Oh, 25 minutes. Lots of punches there.
Exactly. 25 minutes, takedown, submission attempts. They both racked up points. The first time around with Counter Move, I was a moron. And I actually took guys that I thought was going to win the fight, which I realized was meaningless. It's meaningless, Robin.
Well, if you get a first-round knockout, you get 100 points. That's pretty good. But how do we know? That's a tough one to predict.
But with this card on Friday afternoon, kind of a strange time for a card, Nelson Nogueira, unless Nogueira gets hurt, which is a possibility, unless he gets hurt, you figure there's going to be a lot of action in that fight.
Yes.
I'm looking at Kamosi and Andrew Craig as a fight. I think there could be some action in.
Yeah, this is a good one. I like it. I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to find just the right recipe. But it is actually fun. You work over at our other station, Fantasy Sports Network, and I didn't know anything about fantasy sports. Literally nothing. I didn't even know there was fantasy MMA. But at least the Counter Move one is the one people dig, it's the one people understand, and really all you got to do is pick 5 fighters. And no matter how much you know or don't know, you can pick 5 fighters.
Well, that's the thing. One thing about fantasy sports, fantasy baseball, it's 162 games. It's basically a 6-month process. This is great. It's a 2-hour process. And as somebody that bets on fights all the time, I can tell you, this it scratches the itch as well. And you don't bet on the fights, but have you noticed, do you have a little bit of extra interest in what goes on now? Are you checking after the fight to see how many points you got?
Yeah, we live in Canada, and in Canada, in general, we're pretty accepting of marijuana. We kind of figure that that's not a bad thing. Some other places, they're like, that thing's a gateway drug. I don't think that's the case, but Counter Move is kind of the marijuana of gambling, maybe, Maybe our friends at Counter Move don't want us saying that, but yes, it does at least somehow entice you into the idea of being different invested, which is also, I think, why it is kind kind of a cool thing. And as a fight guy, why I kind of like the counter move thing is because it does make you care maybe a little more about the undercard, maybe makes you care about a couple other fights on the card. So I think it's good.
But it makes you think about what fights you got to take and how the fights are going to play out as well.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I'm not a gambler. I know that's your thing. I'm as immersed in just fighting and nothing but fighting as you are about numbers and stats and odds and stuff. But yes, it is fun to play around with this kind of thing.
And so we should note, this is a $500 free roll, and we're going to be raising it up a notch. There's a ton of cards that are rapidly approaching.
We're doing 3 in April.
Yeah, we're going to be doing 3 free Morency and Black free rolls. $500. $1,000, and then the big boy, $2,000, the heavyweight of them all. And the winner will get $1,000 cash this time, and it will split the other dime up amongst the rest of the winners. So there's a couple of things I wanted to get to, Robin, with you. Let's start with Nelson and Nogueira. To me, this is one of these fights. Neither of these guys are working their way up the ladder. Yeah. And I'll get angry if I hear Anik tell us, they're 1 win away from anything. They're not 1 win away from anything, besides maybe their next fight or retirement. Yeah. But it could be an entertaining fight. 2 veterans. But in my opinion, this is extremely difficult to predict, man.
It is.
Every time I leave Nelson for dead, like after the Verdum fight, he rattles off 3 wins, but then he gets beaten up. Yeah. Nelson only really seems to lose to the elite. Yeah. And with all due respect to Nogueira,
is he still elite?
No, and I love the guy. He's a Hall of Famer, man, but he's been run over by buses and he's been run over by fighters for the last 35 years.
If John Ramdeen is like a brother to me, but if I say anything bad about Nogueira, that guy will come roaring in here and try to hit me with something or put a chair over me. I mean, the guy, Nogueira's one of these guys, a certain hardcore, bin fans from the Pride days, they worship this guy. And he does every now and again pull out a performance. Even when Frank Mir busted his arm, he was beating Frank Mir and he was looking very good
He was in control of the fight.
Yeah. But he's also, why do these guys, why does Ramdeen and so many other guys love Nogueira? Because the guy doesn't necessarily believe in this modern idea of the game plan. It's like, I will go in, my jiu-jitsu is better than him, my boxing, I go in, I win. And that's why he's so great. But it's also why he's been submitted twice, only ever, and they're 2 of his last 3 fights, because he's still fighting like, we're just going to go at it and see how it goes. You do that with Roy Nelson, maybe you get knocked unconscious. But where would be the best place to put Roy Nelson? Put the fat man down on his back.
But Roy's ground game's not that bad. His jiu-jitsu's not that bad, Robin. His limbs are so big. How do you submit Roy Nelson? That's what I wonder. How do you submit Roy Nelson?
Well, one area he won't be as good at is getting back to his feet. Everybody works on that, but it's just his body structure. It's going to be harder. And 2, he is a legit Renzo Gracie black belt. Super legit. But the fat man game relies on the half guard game and a lot of chokes and stuff, and that crucifix that he likes. Yeah. Where can he not do all that? Flat on his back with Nogueira in side control, dropping elbows on him.
Nelson is a small favorite, according to the odds makers. Like -130, -140, so it's a slight favorite. Yeah. If the fight's in Brazil, then, we saw Nogueira upset Brendan Schaub as a big underdog there. Yeah. But when I look at this, and I don't love Roy Nelson. I'm not running to the window or to my computer to bet this, but I just feel that Roy Nelson has more ways to win this fight.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think there's also the one huge one. They're both 37 years old, but they're different 37s. They both fought a lot, but man, Nogueira, again, it's why there's a certain segment who loves him. I love these old classic fighters too, but there's a certain segment who loves him because every one of his fights have put miles on his body. And it's 37 years of human age, but in dog's age, fighting dog age, that's thousands,
And here we got Roy Nelson on the other hand, though, who's taken more shots to the head than anybody in the UFC's history.
I know, and he doesn't seem to care. That genetics is one of these things. Like, how do you measure a guy's ability to take punches? I hate to say this, but sometimes you measure it 20 years from now. You know what I mean? But so far, Roy Nelson's one of these guys, you just smash him in the head and he's cool with it.
And push comes to shove, I gotta like Roy Nelson, but for counter move purposes, I'll be taking both of them. Nice. Is that something I didn't know that we could do the first time?
Yeah, we gotta figure these structures out.
Gotta learn, what I mean? Rookie jitters out of the way. A couple of these other fights are intriguing to me. We got this Ryan LaFleur dude. Yeah. He's 10-0, very impressive wrestler, cage savvy. You can tell he's a veteran guy. That he deserves to be where he is. but he's a monster underdog against John Howard here. What do you make of this fight?
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting because this guy's done a hard 45. He's had 3 UFC fights. 45 hard minutes, still 10-0, still kind of young, but I think he's really good because when you've watched those fights, he's literally been good everywhere. Maybe still close, sort of in measurement to some of the other guys he's fought, but in every position, he knows the position. All these young, modern, really fit, mentally good guys, they are good in every spot, and he's one of those guys. Howard's super explosive. Howard has really good striking, but he got cut, won a bunch of fights and came back. I personally like LaFleur in this fight. I really do because he's that modern age fighter. He's that newly developed fighter. But Howard's a big hitter, and he can hurt you pretty bad.
All right, we got to get out of here. But your quick take in about a minute here with Jake Shields being released. To be expected for the most part. And what I don't understand about Jake Shields is somebody that's hung around with the Diaz's for as long as he has. How come his stand-up never got any better?
Yeah, some guys just have this sort of mental ability to learn certain things and not learn others. Like, why we put a running back on Dancing with the Stars and the guy just can't dance? It's kind of the same thing. Jiu-jitsu and striking are not the same thing. These super athletes learn them all, but take Chuck Liddell and try and teach him to dance, take Jake Shields and try to teach him to strike. They just don't necessarily learn it. It's a sad world that we live in that we go, this is to be predicted, that this is predictable, that they cut, a top 10 guy just after one loss.
When do we expect to see you on Dancing with the Stars?
Man, I think I would own that stuff. No, I don't know.
As a betting man, I'd take a shot. I'd take a shot with Black over here.
If they had Dancing with the C-list Canadian stars, I'm your guy.
Dancing with the MMA stars, and we're on to something. All right, MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. Check out Countermove, $500 free roll. That's free, people. Check it out. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. Thanks to Robin Black for joining us in studio. Last week, we let Robin hang around for our Videos of the Week segment, but he rained on our parade, man. And we decided, you know what? We're not going to let Robin get in the way of some quality videos this week. But all kidding aside, we do have some quality videos this week. Now, if you're with us off the top of the program, we had Pat Bam Bam Healey on. He referenced how him and his brother Ryan used to beat the crap out of people in the neighborhood. And people would cry to their parents about the Healy boys playing a little bit too rough. So I told him, we've got the perfect fight league for you. And God bless the Polacks. And this is like the International Fight League, team fighting. This is a team from Poland against a team from Sweden, and it didn't end very well for the Swedes.
This team. Over to the judge.
Shake hands. About rules. No contact with eyes. No contact with Adam Apple. No biting.
Are you ready?
Come brawo! Skoro! Kolana! Musimy!
Dawaj, Miliard! Kolana, jedziesz! I z góry, dajesz!
I love the tires.
Dobrze! Dawaj, piskaj go! Pierdalajcie! Długi, pomóż tu! Długi! Długi, pomóż z tyłu! Pomóż kurwa Miliardowi!
Lej go, Filip, lej go!
Długi Miliardowi pomóż!
Dawaj!
Miliardowi pomóż!
The Swedes are dead. It's like the episode of The Simpsons. Here, look, he's stealing all the Krusty burglars. And Homer Simpson beats the crap out of the Krusty burglar. And Millhouse is like, stop it, he's already dead. Like, not one Swede won. They just got killed. They got killed, and evidently everything goes, except there's no biting allowed. That's some quality, pretty crazy stuff. That was Poland versus Sweden. I want to see Poland versus Russia. That's what I want to see. That was pretty epic. Yeah, Poland versus Russia, I think, would raise it up a notch. All right, last week we showed you a knockout from a guy off of his back, which is pretty impressive. We've got another impressive win off the back here, Boston Crab style.
Has called a stop to the action at 1 minute and 54 seconds of the second round, declaring the winner by a reverse Boston Crab submission, William Healy!
Some pretty technical, impressive stuff right there. Reverse Boston Crab at that. You don't see that very often. Just like you don't see this very often. And, in Brazil, listen, there's only been 4 UFC champions that haven't been from the United States or Canada, basically. So in Brazil, everyone's either a fighter or a soccer player. Now, these guys evidently have combined the both. There are more flying kicks in this video than basically the entire catalog of the UFC and Pride. It's a kick fest. It's a flying kick fest here. Holy Batman, it's a flying kick fest. I believe there's like 112 flying kicks there. There's some pretty good ones, but the video is a little bit grainy. All right, those were our videos of the week this week. Although, like I said, I really want to see Poland versus Russia in that Fight League stuff. And I also really want to see Joey Odessa and his opinion on Roy Nelson and Nogueira. Joey Odessa returns to the rotation. Coming up next, MMA Meltdown continues. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. I am Gabriel Morency. It's time to send it to Costa Rica. We are pleased to announce the return of Joey Odessa. The show was good last week, but it just wasn't the same without kicking it and crunching some numbers with Joey Odessa. Joey, always a pleasure. Great to have you back.
Good to be back, G. Last week wasn't too busy of a week, but we got a good look at Holly Holm and that legacy fight. And, she walked out of there with a broken arm, which I think presents a problem when she turned down, $250,000 to fight Cecilia Brakis in boxing. I think she maybe, my old adage, stick to what you know.
Did she really turn down that $250,000 though? I thought she was going to take the money. I thought that was still a potential fight.
Yeah, but now that her arm's broke, I mean, it doesn't help the matter. I mean, sure, they'll fix it and everything like that, but she broke her arm fighting MMA for maybe arguably less money to build it up, and she's got a future. I don't know what her management's doing. They're doing something right, and they're doing something wrong. They did something wrong by maybe not taking that big money before going, but probably because Cecilia beat her in a boxing match.
Yeah, we should note that there are reports, and you never know about the numbers being true or not, but the reports that the UFC offered her $15,000 a fight. And she said, no, I'm not doing that. Or she said, I'll take the 15 and the 15, but I want a guarantee of much more money if I fight Rousey in a fight or two after I'm in the UFC. But, Joe, you've always talked about Cyborg Santos being mismanaged, and she got beat in the Muay Thai world But Dana White just recently this weekend came out and said that Cyborg has been horribly managed and she's going to be horribly managed for the rest of her career, evidently. But you got Holm on the outside looking in with a broken arm. Cyborg doesn't have a hope in hell. There's a better chance of me signing with the UFC than Cyborg right now. Meanwhile, Gina Carano looks like the return. She's meeting with the UFC brass next week.
And she probably won't outprice herself. She's got a huge name. I'm not taking anything away from Holly Holm. Holly Holm's tough as nails. I don't think she matches up well with Ronda. I mean, eventually that fight's going to go to the ground, and for 2 minutes of work, $30,000, okay, $15,000. She's better off fighting, Cecilia for $250, and then working her way back into MMA. Or, if she could have got that big deal, I don't know. I don't know what her management's doing, but I don't think the broken arm helps too much.
Joey Odessa with us. Okay, Joey, a lot of stuff to get to. We've got it's a rare instance in which we've got a card on Friday afternoon, Joey. Friday morning, the prelims, Friday afternoon, the main event.
These tend to turn out to be pretty good cards. If you recall, you catch a lot of these guys sleeping in the morning. These guys don't want to come in. They want to worry about getting the baseball up and things like that at these sports books. Friday morning might be a good spot for a couple plays on Abu Dhabi, especially the way these numbers have been moving and bouncing all over the screen.
Yeah, not as much as Brock Lesnar's numbers in WrestleMania the other night, but there's still some movement. Man, I wish I would have cashed that ticket. I knew it. I said it on MMA Meltdown Radio. Freaking frustrating. Yeah, all streaks come to an end, including the Undertaker's, but yeah, from what I understand, the highest number it really went off at is about 8-1, Joey.
Well, you know what? Shops deal it as what they call a loss leader, where they put stuff up where there might be predetermined endings, like maybe The Apprentice or, I don't know how those reality show things work, Survivor, things like that. And, a loss leader is almost like a casino comp. Like they're giving you money to win, to get in the door, but once they have your money, come on, the average sports bettor just doesn't withdraw his money, tries to roll it over. And when you go trying to roll it over on a team like, say, Kentucky, you know what I mean? It just doesn't work. I don't know who you needed there, but
no,
UConn was on a roll.
I was on UConn. UConn were the play. Or maybe
momentum, my man, momentum. UConn and under.
Or maybe they're going to roll it over on Jared Rosholt. So I ask you about Rosholt, though, because I know you're a fan of the family. And he didn't look great in his fight against Walt Harris, but he got the win against Walt Harris. And I know you brought it up a lot in the past, more so with Russian dudes. But a lot of times the heavyweights, their first time, it's tough to really gauge them. And then, they'll look like crap and they look like they're going to drop dead. They're like Homer Simpson in there in their first time. But then the second time they look good. So I'm not really sure about Rosholt right now. Joey, what's your take?
This last Russian that I saw, look at the was it the Bellator card that just took place?
Yeah, against Congo?
Against Congo. Good Lord. Congo's wrestling was better than this Russian's wrestling. I was embarrassed for the Russian, in a sense. So you have Rosholt who does wrestle, and if he does wrestle and stays smart, doesn't get himself knocked out, he just out-wrestles this guy. Lay and pray, do what you got to do. But he's training tough. Rosholt, Rosholt's a big, tough dude. He's an NCAA All-American, Oklahoma State. It comes from a long line of wrestling, just wrestling royalty. Josh Rosholt was just an amazing wrestler at Oklahoma State. It didn't translate well to MMA. Jared's got a loss under his belt already. But you know what? So does John Jones. Not that Hamill count really mattered, but sometimes you got to lose. Me. Losing. Nothing good comes out of losing, but he got it out of the way, and I think he's got to take it serious now because, he's not winning any beauty pageants, so he's got to find an occupation where he can bust people up and win some money, or he's got to be really smart.
And he showed a good chin against Harris. Harris popped him, if you remember, and he survived. I hate to put you in the hot seat like this, Joey, but the name of the dude he's fighting, are we just going to go with Oatmeal?
Oh, boy, I tell you. Oatmeal sounds good.
What?
Oatmeal Chuck. Daniel Omenlandzik. He's actually, he's Polish. He's not even Russian. Shame on us. He's Polish. He's not even Russian.
No, I didn't think he was Russian. All right, so let's move on here. Ryan LaFleur is a big favorite. The kid's 10-0, Joey. He's displayed good cage instinct. He's a good wrestler. He's a smart fighter. He's not great, but he's smart, and he doesn't seem to make mistakes. And he's always just been better than the other guy he's faced. John Howard's not great, and we know that, Joey. But nevertheless, Howard's got a couple of wins, man. Bataraza, the Hall. Howard's cashed a couple of tickets as an underdog. I like LaFleur as a fighter, but I don't want to lay minus 400 here, Joey.
Well, you got to figure that against Hall. I mean, he showed that he can, that he could take some shots. Because Hall was supposed to be the next big thing, but he seems to have some sort of a mental lapse or something. But I tell you what, John Howard is not a bad fighter here. Ryan LaFleur, the travel, so much depends. I mean, these guys are fighting in Abu Dhabi at 11 a.m. in the morning. You got guys, some of these guys, I don't even know if they had passports before. I don't look into it, but some of these guys never been out of, 3 states away. I mean, John Howard, he fought all over and stuff, but you get some of these undercard guys that don't travel, and it has a big effect. And there'll be some good spots. And I'm not saying that LaFleur can't win on the road, because he can, but, a few months ago, we really didn't hear a lot about him. And, actually a year, or so ago, because a few months, a year goes by in no time in MMA and boxing, but we didn't know much about him. Now, all of a sudden, he puts a few wins together, and he's the next big thing. I don't see it. I think it's a winnable fight for Howard.
Clay Guida and Kawajiri, what's your take on this one?
Gosh, I want to like Kawajiri, just
it's tough.
Because I've taken some bad beats with Guida. I'm all for the wrestling, fight to win, but I would like to see at this point I'd like to see Kawajiri get the win.
And we've got the main event, which is a pretty tough fight to pick, with Roy Nelson being a small favorite, at least as of right now, as of this taping, Joey. I look at this fight, and I talked about this with Robin Black on the show earlier. We had him in studio. And I think there's more ways for Roy Nelson to win this fight. We know that Roy Nelson isn't going to get knocked out by Nogueira. And is Nogueira going to sub Roy Nelson? I don't think so. He's got some pretty big-ass limbs to be submitting. Not to mention, Roy Nelson's ground game is pretty good. Nogueira's, I don't know what to make of this fight, but it's not in Brazil, so it's neutral ground, so to speak, here. As we say, Joey, the old gun to head in the alley, it's got to be Roy Nelson, in my opinion. What do you make of this one?
Well, my good friend King Mo says that Roy's the best boxer in MMA. I haven't seen the good stuff out of Roy since I've been to since I spent that time in the gym and made the fatal, I fell in love with a gym fighter against when he fought Stipe. I think that I have to go with Nog, and it pains me, but I have to ride with Nog.
Really, you're off the Roy bandwagon, huh?
I am off the Roy bandwagon. Yes, I am. The what do they call them there? Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, and I'm almost back on it. Yet there's some fighters, like we mentioned Brock Lesnar. I had a great read on Brock Lesnar. I could figure out when he was going to win, when he was going to lose. There's certain fighters that we get into that rhythm with, Joey. Nelson, one of these guys, man, like you say, I'm always, I'm late for the wedding and I'm early for the funeral with every Nelson fight, it seems.
Well, is that what's going to happen? Look at some of these rematches that are taking place. I brought up King Mo. And something interesting, Mo's a dog against Quentin Jackson. I'll just throw this out there for Bellator. Our buddy Michael Chandler is about $1.70 favorite over Alvarez. Opened at 155. They came in on Chandler. This is one of those fights that, again, when Nog's not expected to win, he wins. And when Roy's, it's a tough fight. It really is a tough fight. I'm not thrilled. I think Cormier, Cormier lumped up Nelson, who's every bit of the 5-1 favorite he should have been. Stipe beat him. And, Roy beat Congo, but, with respect to Roy, Congo's no world beater. But I tell you, the Roy that I saw in the gym will take Nog down. The Roy that I saw in the gym can box and hold his own, more than his own against Nog, who way back they said was, potential being a Olympic boxer. Remember when they were talking the nonsense about Vitor making the Olympic team boxing? I mean, I'm going back years. It's a tough fight, but, you put a gun to my head, I'm going to have to go with Nog, and it pains me. And you don't know what kind of judges we're going to get over there. You got to remember, Abu Dhabi's a big, Abu Dhabi, what's it known for besides, to the MMA world? You think of grappling. And, there aren't, Nog is world famous grappling, worldwide. You know what I mean? He fought over in Japan and Pride for all those years before coming to the UFC. I think he's got a shot here. It might be his final go around. He could pull out a decision.
Joey Odessa, you can follow him on Twitter at MMA Odds, the premier combat sport odds maker in the business, bar none. Joey, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for the time.
Hey, my pleasure, Gabe. Have a good one.
It was great having Joey Odessa back in the rotation. And man, this is a tough fight to pick. I don't know what you guys think at home about this, but you can always fire me off a tweet at SportsRage at twitter.com. But I got to respectfully disagree with Odessa. It's not the lock of the century by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm leaning with Roy Nelson. Big country, baby. MMA Meltdown continues. All right, thanks to all of our guests in Robin Black, Joey Odessa, and Pat Bam Bam Healey. As I stated, this Nogueira-Nelson fight is a really tough one, but if I have to take somebody, I will take Roy Nelson. If you're not going to be betting the fights, play for free, fantasy free roll, Morency and Black. Fight Network and Fantasy Sports Network free roll. It's at countermove.com. It's a $500 in prizes, and it's free to enter. But you got to get in because the fights start early Friday morning. Shout out to everybody here at the Fight Network. Other than that, you're on your own. Later.